Hi there, it's Cherylea from Anatomy for the People. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the brachial plexus. Consider this your ultimate guide. So the brachial plexus is a complex network of nerves which transmits information between your spinal cord and your upper limb. So there are 5 spinal nerves that are going to be contributing to the brachial plexus, and it is the anterior rami of these spinal nerves that will actually feed into the brachial plexus. So these are our roots. So we have contributions from level C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. So these pop out like this. And some of these are going to join together to form trunks. But before they do that, some of these roots are going to give off some branches. So coming off the C root itself, we have the dorsal scapular nerve. And the dorsal scapular nerve will supply levator scapulae and the rhomboids. Also coming off C5 and C6 and C7, these little branches will all join together to form the long thoracic nerve. And the long thoracic nerve goes on to supply serratus anterior. Okay, so let's now move into the section where they are the trunks. So C5 and C6 will join together to form the superior or the upper trunk. C7 doesn't merge with anything else and it just becomes the middle trunk. And then C8 and T1 join together to form the inferior or the lower trunk. And let's just put a dotted line here to separate these different parts. Okay, so we have some branches coming off the trunks, just the superior trunk actually. So coming off the superior trunk, we have the suprascapular nerve. So we'll just write suprascap. And the suprascapular nerve will go on to supply supraspinatus and infraspinatus, and it is also sensory to the shoulder joint. Also coming off the superior trunk, we have the nerve to subclavius. And the nerve to subclavius will supply subclavius, but it will also be sensory to the sternoclavicular joint. So these are all of the branches that come off the trunk. So nothing comes off the middle trunk or the inferior trunk. So now let's do another dotted line, because now we're moving into the section where we have divisions. And let's do that in a different color. So there are 3 anterior divisions and 3 posterior divisions, and each trunk will have one of each. So let's have a look at the posterior divisions because they all join up together to form the posterior cord. So the posterior division of the superior trunk will come down like this. The posterior division of the middle trunk will join up here, and the posterior division of the inferior trunk will join up here, and then they form the posterior cord. Okay, and then let's just pop this in here so I don't lose you. And this is the cords. So remember, all of these blue ones, they're the posterior divisions. And let's do the anterior divisions in yellow. So the anterior division of the superior trunk continues out here to form the lateral cord, and the anterior division of the middle trunk will cross over here, join up to also form a part of that lateral cord, and then the anterior division of the inferior trunk continues out on its own to make the medial cord. Okay, so we have our 3 cords and we have lots of branches coming off, and hopefully I have enough space to put them all in. Okay, so let's do our branches in yellow. So coming off the lateral cord, we just have one, which is nice and easy. That is the lateral pectoral nerve. And the lateral pectoral nerve will supply pectoralis major and some of pec minor. And then so that's all that comes off the lateral cord. So coming off the posterior cord, we have 3 branches, 1, 2, and 3. And we have the upper and lower subscapular nerve. So I'll just write subscap. Subscap. So the upper subscapular nerve will supply the upper part of subscapularis. The lower subscapular nerve will supply the lower part of subscapularis, but it also supplies teres major. Then the last branch coming off the posterior cord is the thoracodorsal nerve. So I'll just do TD. And that goes on to supply latissimus dorsi. Okay, coming off the medial cord, we have 3 branches. 1, 2, 3. We have the medial pec. And that goes on to supply pec minor and some of pec major, so the opposite of the lateral pectoral nerve. And then the 2 remaining branches, they've got really long names, but they're very similar. So both of these will be the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and forearm. Okay, so one is, can't spell. Okay, so one is going to be the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, and one is going to be the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So these nerves will only have sensory supply, so they don't supply muscles. So the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm will supply the medial aspect of the arm, so the skin, down to the skin over the olecranon, so your elbow. And then the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm will then continue on and supply the skin down the medial aspect of the forearm, down to the wrist. Okay, so now we move into the final parts of the brachial plexus. So let's get a brand new colour. Let's go with orange. Do our little line here. Oh, cheeky. So this section here is our terminal branches. And so there are 5 terminal branches, and each of the cords will contribute to 2 of these 5. Okay, so let's start with the lateral cord and the terminal branches that it contributes to. Okay, here we have musculocutaneous. And so the musculocutaneous nerve receives innervation from C5, C6, and C7. And so you can see that it's essentially picked up everything that has moved through the lateral cord. And so if we follow this back, C5 and C6 has gone through that superior trunk, through that anterior division into the lateral cord, and C7 has gone through that middle trunk in that anterior division, lateral cord, so then it's all been picked up by musculocutaneous. So musculocutaneous is going to be responsible for supplying things in the arm and in the forearm. So in the arm, it is going to be supplying the anterior arm muscles. So that would be your coracobrachialis, brachialis, and your biceps brachii. And then as it moves down into the forearm, it will supply the skin of the lateral forearm. Okay. And then it does it down to the wrist. And then the next terminal branch that the lateral cord contributes to is this one down here, which is the median. So this is the lateral contribution to the median. And you may be asking, well, where is the medial contribution? I mean, that is a hot topic. And the answer to that is that the medial contribution comes from the medial cord, and that goes up like this. So the median has contributions from all of the roots. So I'm just going to put all here. And essentially it's picked up everything that has moved through the lateral cord, so C5, 6, and 7, and then everything that's moved through the medial cord, so C8 and T1. So the median does a lot, and sometimes it's hard to remember, but you just have to. So the median doesn't do anything in the arm, it just does things in the forearm and in the hand. So the median, as it moves into the forearm, so it will supply anterior forearm muscles. So that would be your pronator teres, your flexor carpi radialis, your palmaris longus, if you have one. I have both. It's a good little testy. You just oppose your thumb and your pinky, and you just, can you see them? God, this must look so ridiculous. I can kind of see it in the reflection, and oh my gosh, this is a terrible demonstration. Okay, you can kind of see it here. That's nice. Anyway, I do have two. Some people don't have them at all. So, and I have two. So that's the end of that. Okay, so palmaris longus. Sorry, that was a huge derailment. But bringing you back, flexor digitorum superficialis, and then the median will give off a small little branch, which is the anterior interosseous nerve, and so then that goes to supply deeper structures. So that would be your the lateral part of flexor digitorum profundus, your flexor pollicis longus, and your pronator quadratus. Then as we move into the hand, so it's just median nerve proper, not the anterior interosseous nerve. When we get down into the hand, it's going to be doing your first and your second lumbricals and majority of the thenar muscles. So that would be your opponent's pollicis, your flexor pollicis brevis, specifically the superficial head. The deep head is supplied by something else, and then your abductor pollicis brevis. So that's what median does in the hand. Then if we're talking about sensory supply, it has no sensory supply in the forearm, but only in the hand. So what it does is palmar skin and digits 1, 2, 3, and half of 4. So it does the lateral half of the fourth digit. It also will wrap around to the tips of those 3.5 digits. Okay, so now let's move on to the other terminal branch coming off the medial cord, because it's just hanging there. So the medial cord is going to contribute to the ulnar nerve, and the ulnar nerve only picks up supply from C8 and T1, so C8 and T1, and so it's just essentially picked up everything in the medial cord. The ulnar nerve is going to do a lot in the hand, and it does pick up some things in the forearm as well. So as it moves through the forearm, it supplies flexicarpi ulnaris, and it also does the medial half of flexor digitorum profundus. Then as we move into the hand, it does quite a lot. And so that's why if you ever bang your ulnar nerve or your funny bone, you can really feel it in your hand, because that's where most of it is most of that nerve is going to. So in the hand, it's going to finish off the thenar muscles that weren't picked up by the median, and then it's going to do all of your hypothenar muscles. So it's going to pick up the flexor pollicis brevis, the deep head. It's going to do adductor pollicis, bringing the thumb in. Then if we move over to the hypothenars, we've got the abductor digiti minimi, we've got the flexor digiti minimi brevis, and the opponent's digiti minimi. We've also got the third and the fourth lumbricals for the muscles, and then in between the bones we have our interossei in the palm, so palmar interossei, and then also dorsal interossei being supplied by the ulnar nerve. In terms of sensory supply, it is only in the hand, and it does the palmar skin here, so kind of medial to where median had stopped. It does that medial half of that fourth digit, and it does the fifth digit. So you can see it's essentially just picking up where median had stopped. So it does the palmar side, and then it also does the dorsal side, so just from that middle fourth digit and the fifth digit. Okay, so now, where's my pen? Got it. Stop looking. So now we're looking at the terminal branches of the posterior cord. We have two branches coming off. Comes out here like this. Gives us, oh, it's getting a bit confusing here. Stay with me. We have the axillary and we have the radial. So you may know that one does way more than the other. Let's start with the easy one. So the axillary, so that picks up contributions from root C5 and C6. And so even though there is essentially all of the roots contributing to the posterior cord, it is only picked up 5 and 6. So it's picked up 5 and 6 through the superior trunk, through that posterior division, posterior cord, and only C5 and C6 has moved on to axillary. So axillary is going to supply the deltoid and teres minor for muscles, and then for your skin supply, it's going to be doing the superior lateral aspect of the arm, and then also the shoulder joint, so sensory to the shoulder joint. Okay, so that's axillary, nice and easy. So then radial. Radial has contributions from all of the nerve roots. That's a funny little A. So yeah, all of them. And it has picked up everything that has moved through the posterior cord. Okay, so get ready. Get a cup of tea ready. Gonna be here for a long time. Okay, so the radial nerve will supply structures in the arm, forearm, and in the hand. And it's going to do basically everything on the back. So in the posterior arm, the muscles that it's going to supply would be your triceps brachii and your anconeus. So then if we move down into the forearm, it's going to do all of your posterior forearm muscles. And that would be your brachioradialis, your extensor carpi radialis longus, your extensor carpi radialis brevis, your extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor carpi ulnaris, and supinator. Then you will have a small branch that comes off the radial nerve, which is the posterior interosseous nerve, which will go on to supply deeper structures. So that would be your extensor indicis, your abductor pollicis longus, your extensor pollicis brevis, and your extensor pollicis longus. Okay. Then if we're talking about sensory supply, in the arm, it's going to do the inferior lateral aspect of the arm, so skin, and the posterior aspect of the arm. And then skin for forearm, it's going to be all of the posterior forearm. And then as we get to the hand, it is going to do, so we know that ulna is doing this part here. So it does the whole dorsum of the hand, besides this medial part here, and then it does the posterior aspect of digit 1, 2, 3, and then half of that fourth one. So it does the medial half. And that's the brachial plexus. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope that you've learned something. See you later. Bye.